Good evening, good people. I hope you are having the time of your lives. I mean, we are absolutely enjoying ourselves here in studio, joining you live at this year's TADHackZA 2021. Hey, it's 2021. We had 2020 last year. Hey. But yeah, an awesome opportunity we've had to actually be part of this exciting initiative. We've seen amazing engagement on our Varus platform, from our techies and our developer community. And we also got to journey a bit around the world to see what our community is doing across the world, trying to solve challenges that really, really matter. And I have the pleasure this evening to bring to you an amazing cohort group of basically thought and practice leaders in the space, in the tech space. They've been around the block. They've attended a number of hackathons. They've built solutions that are actually commercialized in industry, and they continue to solve problems for the broader tech community, whether it's the private sector, public sector, civil sector, even as well as academia. So it's my pleasure to introduce 5 amazing gentlemen, and I hope in the next cohort or next session we can actually have 5 amazing ladies as well to balance the gender spectrum. It's absolutely very, 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 very critical to balance this gender spectrum in this particular space. I am joined live basically by gentlemen that we call, I know they call you the tech bros. I don't know if this is accurate or it's one of those controversial situations that we're hearing when we go through Twitter and seeing all of those stuff. But I'm really thrilled, and the team is very excited to actually have you join us. I can see the Sihle, I can see Mukondeteri, I can see, it's so awesome to see these amazing gentlemen joining us live today. So I'm going to start basically with you, Sihle. Maybe you can just quickly introduce yourself and what you do basically at the company that you work for.
Yo. So my name is Sihle Mabalega. I work as a full stack software engineer. At the company, I do a lot of cool things. So from working with executive and scoping things out all the way to sort of like doing things like Power Apps, right? So my job is to solve problems. So it doesn't matter what tech or stack it is. I just solve problems. Yeah, that's me.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Sihle, for that quick introduction. Let me invite Mr. Kumete. How are you doing, sir?
Oh, good. I muted myself for a moment there.
Awesome. Can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you very well. Thank you. If you can
Awesome.
just briefly introduce yourself and basically what you do.
Oh man, I'm also a full stack dev for a company called Codio in Kloof. I think around between Pinetown and Hillcrest. Pretty much do that mostly, and I'm a code enthusiast and an open source enthusiast also. So yeah.
Awesome. And as I told you, colleagues, that we've got an amazing team of developers who will be able to answer some of your code blues. A lot of our participants are going through difficulties at the moment, and we thought let's bring some of the top minds in South Africa and perhaps also on the continent to help them with the challenges that they face. Let me invite Mr. Dumela to come and basically also just introduce himself and what he does.
Hello everyone, I am Mukondeteri Dumela, if you can pronounce Mukondeteri. I'm also a full stack software dev. I work for the same company as Sihle, but at that company I'm basically doing back-end work, and yeah, it's really been really fun working with the team. On the side, I work a lot on African languages, building tech tools to teach people various African languages. Yeah, that's it about me.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that introduction. And we can now move on to Mr. Tobajani to please introduce himself.
Good evening, everyone. So I'm a full stack software developer, and I currently work at Aura as a mobile engineer. And what I do there is basically build multiple security apps for different companies that need to offer these services to their customers. So yeah, that's just me. And on the side, I do some Flutter work. Yeah.
Cool. I told you, ladies and gentlemen, that we have amazing team of thought and practice leaders joining us live today. And I'm going to be moving on now to Mr. Ricordo. Please, if you can just introduce yourself.
Cool. Good evening, everyone. So my name is Vutlari Ricordo, but most people have never heard that before because everyone calls me VT. I'm a CTO at the same company that Mukondeteri and Sihle work on, Basalt Technologies. And my job is basically, growing, maintaining, and supporting teams. That's it about me.
Fantastic. Awesome stuff. An amazing team of thought and practice leaders who are going to be working with us and helping to solve some of the code challenges that we have. As you know, all work without play makes, they say, is it Jack, a dull boy? I don't know, but I know that we need to do some play as well, so I understand that there's going to be a game that we're going to be playing with our, guests this evening. I hope they are absolutely ready, and the game really entails asking them some key questions, and from those questions, if any one of these questions actually applies to you, you know what you need to do. I know that you probably have your coffee or juice ready. As you know, this platform is, we've got parental guidance situation happening right here. So we are going basically the soft drink route, the water route, to ensure that, we adhere to the policies that govern this particular platform. So if you've got your juices and drinks ready, let me just see, lift them up, colleagues, let me see. We are all ready. No, it's all systems go. I'm excited to actually see what's happening here. The game's about to begin right now. We're going to start with questions. And if this question applies to you, basically, you actually will take your sip and drink. And I will actually engage you also to say, I want you to perhaps elaborate on what actually transpired when that particular situation took place. I hope you're ready. The games will begin shortly. So the first question, okay, before I even go to the first question, let me just introduce the name of the game. We call it Never Have I Ever. That's the name of the game. And I'm sure you've played it in a number of places. So it's a great opportunity to play it live, in front of our audience. And it's an amazing community of developers who are watching live and very excited. And I think some of them probably want to play along. Yes, if you want to play along, please grab your drink as well, and let's play along collectively with our guests today. We've got Mr. Dumela, we've got Mr. Vutlari Rikhotso, we've got Sihle Mabaleka, we've got Mr. Nduduzi Gumete, we've got Mr. Josiah Tobejani, amazing leaders who are ready to actually solve your problems, but they just want to start with us right now as we play this amazing game. Never have I ever. So the first question is, never have I ever committed my code to a branch without unit testing it. Does this question apply to any one of you? I can see 3 of our stakeholders there. Is it 3 or 4? Okay, no, it's actually 4. Mr. Dumela is the only one who is actually not actually drinking right now. So let me actually take you, Mr. Sihle. Perhaps just give us some context. What happened, sir? If you can just elaborate, Sihle, if you can hear me. Okay, it seems like Sihle is having some technical issues. Mr. Rikhotso, I see you smiling, and perhaps let me invite you in to come and elaborate to us what transpired.
Look, I'm a big believer in unit testing, but anyone who says they've never committed code without tests is a very dishonest person. Look, I think we've all had cases where the product owner was on your case and this needs to be done now, and we've told ourselves the old age lie, I'll test later, and so in crunch times we've pushed and broken production a few times. So yeah,
super. Thanks for sharing that. Thank you for your honesty. Honesty is the best policy on this platform, colleagues. Sihle, I don't know if you want to come through as well to just give us your anecdote.
So for me, there's different cases, a lot of the time is to move the project along. You convince yourself that it's to move the project along. It's like and then it comes back and bites you.
Oh, yeah.
Half the time, it always comes back and bites you. And it's never the thing that you thought you were fixing. That thing is perfect. It works fine. It's all the other stuff that you did not expect that starts breaking. And so that's sort of the things that I wish I didn't do, but they happen. With where unit tests are concerned, it gets even worse because you're like, it works, so I don't need to write the test for this, and then it breaks something else.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. I know that we've got a lot of other questions coming through, and I know that you can give all your feedback, but you'll all get a chance to actually give a bit of context. Thank you very much for that. And I think our audience at home are also learning that you definitely need to do things right, or else they will come and bite. So there's a great learning opportunity there for our audience back at home. So we move on to the second question. If you're ready, gentlemen, We will go to the second question, and the second question says, never have I ever told people I developed an AI bot, but I was actually the person responding behind that bot. I see people are cracking. So let's see, gentlemen, if this applies to you, please do drink and let's see. Let's see. Is there anyone here who's going to be honest enough to tell us if this actually ever transpired? No, I see no one is a taker this time around. No, it doesn't apply to our developers here today. Our guests are saying, no, I have never done that. I do things according to game. Sorry, colleagues, I'm having the time of my life here, with this particular questions. So let's move on to the third question. And the question says, never have I ever hard-coded authentication on my application. Let's see, any taker? So what I'm seeing here is that two of our esteemed, guests have actually responded to this particular one. Let me take you, sir, Mr. Mukondeteri Dumela, if you can just maybe just give us some context.
Yeah, well, I was using a lower version of PHP, and there was a forced update on my host, which was going to, I think, 7 point something. So the authentication, like encrypt method, was breaking because it wasn't there anymore. So it was either I spend, I don't know how many hours I would have had to spend to fix my particular user, or I just hard coded so I can be able to log in and continue with my work. So yeah, that was the situation.
Awesome. Thank you so much. What an amazing, sharing. Thank you for sharing that with us, and I love what I'm hearing coming through from our esteemed guest, Mr. Tobejani. Maybe let me invite you to also share your experience.
So in my case, if the context is the same, during like my PHP days, I have had to retrieve passwords from the database, retrieve email stuff from the database, and then compare with my code without using any like third-party authentication stuff. So I have like written my own authentication. So is this your password? Is this your email? I'm going to the database, I'm going to compare, and I'm going to tell you if you should go in or not. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And I'm going to invite Mr. Ricotta to bring up his video as well as we move to the next question. And so I see that his video is currently off, but we are inviting him to put his video on because I want to see if this applies to him or not. Okay, so we will now move on to the fourth question, and I see that Mr. Ricotta is also here with us. And the question is, never have I ever searched how to use a for loop. Does this apply to any one of you? I see two of our guests actually, admit, okay, three. Okay, thank you so much for that honesty. This is awesome. Let me invite, let me invite Mr. Gumete to please come on board and just tell us your story.
First of all, languages are not the same, and there's this tricky thing with for loops. The updates are indexed, where you don't know if you're gonna say greater than or equal to, or just greater than, and then it's gonna hit all the elements of your array that you're looping through. So you have to Google for it. Pretty much any language that you're picking up. And I have a bad habit of learning a new language halfway and then start coding without learning everything from that language. So eventually I'm gonna run into a for loop issue where, like, for instance, I think I struggled mostly with Python with that one, how to loop through the ranges in Python.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And I think our guests, our audience at home, they're absolutely having the time of their lives, because these are situations that they also go through. So it's lovely to see that they are not the only ones going through these challenges. Let me invite Mr. Tobejani to come on board.
Yeah, so this has happened to me, and I'm guilty of what Stu just said, like learning a language halfway and then trying to go all in. So I have had to Google how to use a for loop, especially with Node.js. And this was happening. I think I was trying to replace some keys in an object, and then I did not know how to do it, how to map through the object. So yeah, I've had to Google for loops.
Thank you very much, and we'll now give an opportunity to Mr. Dumela to please, give us his, reflections and his experience.
Yeah, so with me, it's a similar situation as well. But what I was essentially trying to do was to fix an issue without learning the language. So the only way I could do it was just to do a quick search for how to use a for loop. But yeah.
Super. Thank you. Thank you very much for that and for your engagement. We're super excited, to engage on this particular platform. So let's actually move on to our last question for this particular game segment. And the question is, never have I ever committed Node modules to a Git platform. Does this question apply to anyone? I see there are takers there. Please, honesty is the best policy here, colleagues. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I see that the numbers are increasing. Great stuff. So let me take you, Sihle, perhaps give us some of your reflections.
These things happen. Like sometimes you're even committing the settings to your VS Code. You commit them. Like these things, they happen. And I've realized that a lot of the times they happen when I decide to do things myself. Like I don't use one of the CLIs or something that's configured with the platform, because that would typically come with a git ignore as part of it and everything. So I forget, and I'm like, it's only the only time I start looking at my git ignore is when I start adding environment variables. But before then, and then you see after like. No.
Super. Thank you so much, Sihle, for that. And Stu, maybe you can also give us your experience.
Yeah, I found out in the most horrible way that I committed the node modules folder. I was using mobile data, and while pulling my project, I ran out and then checking online what happened. I saw that there's node modules in the file. So every time working with NPM now, I check the git ignore and all the folders that are set. It's a lesson I learned the hard way while I was still learning.
Awesome. Let me hear from you. Is it Mr. Tobejani, Joss? Let me hear from you.
Yeah. So I was picking up my project to GitHub. And then while doing that, I was just trying to clean up my repos locally. And I tried to delete every file that almost seemed useless to the repo, and git ignore appeared to be one of them. So deleting that meant everything that was in my repo went through to GitHub, and Node modules was part of them. So yeah, painful experience.
Super. I see that, Butlari is actually really cracking where he is. He's having the time of his life. Thank you so much for playing the game with us, and I think this has been really insightful. And the whole aim of this game really is to help everybody, to understand that the app development, game is a journey, actually, right? It's a journey that we all embark on, and it's a learning journey, and you can never stop learning. And as we always say, that lifelong learning is a key element to really remaining competitive and sustainable within this particular space. And we urge the TED hackers to relax and focus on getting their solutions up to par. And it's a journey, as we've heard from your own experiences. We're going to take a quick break right now, and then we'll return with a segment where we'll be focusing primarily on really delving deep into a discussion point on some of the best practices that we need to take into consideration as a community. We'll see you shortly after this particular break. Awesome. Welcome back. Welcome back, everybody. We are still at the TADHackZA 2021. We are hanging out with amazing leaders, innovators in the game who have really been doing amazing things in the sector, and they've been sharing some of their experiences, with code, and and I think you can relate to some of the key things that they've been going through. I think before we move to our discussion, I see that there's a question coming from one of our participants. It's Johannes Mokhashwe, who says, for a hackathon, is it better to start with the front end or back end, and how far do we settle for using the sponsors tools versus the ones that you already have? So I'm going to take this question and give it to our guests today and see if they can assist us basically in answering this question. Gentlemen, are you clear about the question? Did you hear the question? Fantastic. Let me take you, Mr. Tobejani, if you can just help us with your response to this question.
Yeah, from my experience, it has been better to start with the back end, and this also comes after you define what you need to collect from your users, and basically your back end would define how your front end should look like. So if you know what you're going to be showing from your database, from all your sources, then it makes it much better to build your front end. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. And I see that we have also other takers. So should I invite Sihle? Maybe you want to come in and give your feedback on it?
Start middle out. For all the 10 pros, they understand that one. You start middle out. But for me, I think it really matters very little where you start, as long as you have direction, right? How I typically start is I'd go front end first, right? I'm more of a tangible person, and I like seeing my things. I like seeing results. So once I know what the front end would look like and what I'm expecting from those, it becomes a lot easier to develop and create like a back end and attach those very same things that I'm seeing on my design and just add them to my back end. So I think it's important to just start and keep moving, but middle out.
Awesome, Mr. Dumela. Maybe you can come in as well and share your experience and your thoughts in this regard.
Yeah, I mean, same for me. I think it shouldn't really matter where you start, but I think the main thing that you should keep in mind is that you should be able to you are able to mock a backend. So even if it's not complete, there are certain things that for the purposes of the hackathon you can sort of pretend they're working. But it's very hard to do that for the front end. So you shouldn't need just to keep that in mind.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Ricordo. I know you also are burning with an answer for this particular one. Please, if you can come through and just also give your response.
Cool. I think my answer would be different if it was actually building a solution, a full solution. But we're talking about, at a hackathon, you've got limited time, you've got, just a couple of days or even hours. And because of that, I think it's more important to start with the front end because you cannot demo the back end to the judges. You can fake a lot on the front end if you don't finish. Actually, you can complete an entire hackathon without a back end and still be able to convince the judges of your solution and demonstrate them how to solve the problem. So for me, I'd always say almost always front end. Make sure that you can demonstrate the journey way before you even consider what technology to use on the back end.
Awesome. Thank you very much for sharing your insights. I can see we're getting more of our guests actually nodding and saying, yeah, I agree with these answers. Thank you very much for sharing your answers to this. And Johannes, I think I hope this actually answers your questions, and you're absolutely happy with that, with those answers that you received from our esteemed guests. And I think I want to start us with, sometimes we use words and words just become buzzwords without really understanding what they are. So maybe let's start with this simple question. In simple terms and in your own words, what really is an API, and what would you advise to, what would be your advice to the TED hackers on what they can do basically to maximize the use of the APIs? Who is a taker? VT, let's actually invite you back.
Cool. I'll take that. I think in very simple terms, an API is a way to provide access to data over the internet. So our coders might know that the most common way to store data is on a database. And if you have an application that is sitting in the same server as the database, you'd likely access that database directly. But you might want to provide that data to someone else in a secure manner. So there's something called an application programming interface or an API. There's multiple ways of exposing your data, such as REST, GraphQL, or SOAP. I think the buzzword now is GraphQL, but I won't go into that, or REST, and there's multiple formats, XML, JSON, all of that. But simply all it is providing access to someone else, your data to someone else over the internet. So let's take, someone has an application where they have stored all the shops, all the taxi ranks in South Africa, their location, the cost of a taxi from one place to another. That person might have the desire to expose that information for someone else who wants to build an application. So let's say you want to build a taxi rank finder. Someone who has access to that data could expose that data to you via an API so that you could build your app without having to collect that data yourself. I hope that helps.
Awesome, it absolutely does. And I see other guests are also nodding as you're talking. So let me invite Mokondleteri Dumela to come in and just give us his thoughts on this particular question.
Yeah, no, so I share the same thoughts with VT. It's just a simple way to really provide data and in some cases some logic that you don't want to provide directly from within an app. So this means that you have a central place where you give someone a URL that they can call every time they need some data or they need some actions performed. So the API can expose things like log in, register, add a new user, remove a user. It can even be for AI capabilities. So I mean, for instance, in one of my projects, we are using an API where we send an image to Google and then would have Google return back the result of what it analyzed within that particular image. So it can also be used to extend functionality. Yeah, but I share much of what VT said.
Fantastic, fantastic. And let me invite Jaws, if you want to come in, perhaps also to give your thoughts.
If I can just touch on the second question about how participants can maximize the APIs from the sponsors, I think they would want to take a look at which coding languages the sponsors support with the APIs. And then from there, basically look at the use cases within the app and see if they would be able to use any API from the sponsors. And before you go out of your way to find other APIs, first look if any of the sponsors can help you with what you're wanting to do within your app. And that will definitely also help you when you go to present your solution to the judges. Yeah, use the sponsors first before you go out.
Fantastic, fantastic. Stu, I think we've got a question, and I think this would be another question that I can just give to you. And the question is, what is the best web service security method to use for an API? I'll start with you and then extend it to the rest of our esteemed thought leaders today.
Why are you giving me the hard questions? Could you give me the question again? I want to make sure that I slash it as much as I can.
Okay, super. So the question is, what is the best web service security method to use for an API?
Seems broad for me to just slam out in a single statement.
Okay, let's start it with perhaps wherever you can, and I know the team will actually be able to bring it together. I think the fact that we have 5 amazing minds here will be able to dissect this question and make it work.
Yeah. First one, which is very important, is SSL. I think most providers now for APIs wants you to accept or provide data with them from a secure endpoint, or your application should be secure. So HTTPS as much as you can, and there's quite a number of items I could also name to help with security. But yeah, I'll stop there for now before I digress.
Awesome. Let me invite Sihle to please come in and just give us your thoughts on this question and see how we can help our participants.
Okay, cool. So I work with this a lot because I do a lot of integration, right? So this is something that I deal with extensively. So what Stu said, yes, mutual SSL. So you'd have your certificate on one end where your application is, and you'd have your certificate on where you're calling the API. And what they do is they speak to each other, create a handshake with the mutual SSL, and mum's your word, you are sort of like authenticated that this might be the right thing. And ultimately, how the easiest way to secure essentially an API for me is OAuth. And that entire flow, it's a bit complex, but I think once you go through that flow and you end up with a JWT token, you are very much on your way to building secure APIs, I would think. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And Kundleteri, let me invite you also, because I know you deal with this also quite extensively. Maybe just add a word, and maybe what colleagues may have missed, you can also add there.
Yeah, no, I share a lot of what Stu and Sihle said as well. But I just want to speak to, like, in simple terms, why you need to secure an API and what sections of the API like you may need to secure. So the first thing that you need to understand about APIs is that it's a URL that can be available to anyone in the world. So this means that me as a dev, I can also have access to your API. So the first thing that you need to secure, you can secure like who is calling the API, like which app is calling the API. So platforms like Firebase have something like app check, which ensures that the right app is calling the API. And then the second layer has to do with the user. So because it's an open API and anyone can use it, you want to make sure that when you are sending back data of maybe a list of friends, a profile, or anything like that, or even if, like in some cases, like you are performing actions like updating data or making withdrawals of cash, anything like that, you want to make sure that you're dealing with the right person. And that's where OAuth that Sihle was talking about would come in. And then lastly, you want to make sure that the data which is being sent from a browser to your API is also safe from anyone who's in the middle. And that's where like things like SSL, like HTTPS would come in to ensure that that data is protected. Yeah, that's what I wanted to add.
Awesome. Thank you very much for sharing your insights. And I think our participants are absolutely delighted, and they're getting empowered by this session. And the definitions, they're not going to use words without actually understanding what they actually mean. And thank you very much for bringing your insights. This is the TADHackZA 2021, and we are having our Code Blue session with amazing entrepreneurs, innovators who have done amazing things in the space, and they are sharing their knowledge and know-how with you to ensure that you can actually be able to solve some of the critical challenges that you face in this particular program. So looking at this, colleagues, I know that we're looking at code. When you look at code quality is a very important aspect. Code quality is absolutely essential. So writing good code is a must. What would you describe as a clean code? I don't know who wants to be the first to take this. I see smiles there on on our panelists. VT, let me invite you in to actually just give us a definition of what is a clean code.
So I think this is a very controversial question. I actually ask it a lot when we when I conduct interviews at work. I used to hold a different opinion when I was younger, or in my career. I used to think there was a very prominent leader in the space who wrote a lot of books. He actually wrote a book called Clean Code, and he predefines specific specs on what clean code looks like. And I used to think clean code was that. But now I think I'm a bit older, therefore wiser. I think quality code is code where other developers, don't need the original author of the code to work on. So it's code that's easy to onboard new people, regardless of their skill level. You don't have to have a PhD to start working on that feature or fix a bug on it. It's something that's easy to follow. It's easy to, it's easy to fix, and it's easy to maintain. I personally believe that the primary value of code is that it be resilient to inevitable change. If there's something that we do know about code, is that it's going to change. So quality code is code that doesn't fight you back when it needs to change.
Wow, man, what a profound definition. I never thought that there would be a word like code resilience, so code that never fights you back when it needs to change. No, now we're getting educated, we're getting empowered. Thank you very much for sharing that. And with that question, really, as a follow-up question, how can the TED hackers ensure that they can build quality code? Maybe we can just invite some of our panelists to just add in terms of really what do you need to do to build quality code. Mukundaderi, do you want to come in?
I would like to give this one to Sihle. I know.
Okay, fantastic. Sihle, you've been nominated to answer this particular one, Sihle. Over to you.
I'm not even sure why, because typically I'm a lone wolf. Like I write code and then keep it moving. Like I don't. So I would think for me how the TED hackers can actually ensure that they write clean code. It goes back to what VT said. I think try your best to make sure that whoever is looking at your code is able to look at it and is able to take over without much need from you, and intervention from you. But even further, I think I'll take it a step further with one of his recommendations that he gave to me, which speak to, if you have to do something more than 3 times, then abstract it, right? Think about a much more smarter way to start doing that. I think that leads to even further quality code and sort of like well thought out patterns in the way that you're building your solution. So I would say that's sort of like an extra step that you can take. Like if you have to do it more than 3 times, like if you find yourself having to perform a function or copy and paste code more than 3 times, then abstract it. Try and create a class outside that is able to sort of like do all of that logic and make it a little bit easier for you. Interface as much as possible. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you very much for that answer. I've got a question for Jos and Zdu, and this question is an exciting one. And the question is, to template or not to template? That is the question.
So
Jos, want to come in?
So is it like a front-end question? To template or not to template?
So let's look at it from from front end. Yeah.
So from a front-end perspective, I would say template if you need to reuse the front end or like the view that you are templating. So if it's something like a nav bar that would almost be on like 7 pages across your app, definitely template it, have one file for it, and then call it in all the other 7 files. But if it's something that you only gonna use once and it's not too huge to take over space in your current file, then maybe you might not need to template it. But yeah, if you need to reuse it, template it.
Awesome. And Stu, maybe let's hear your view. I don't know if you've got a contrary view or you are in agreement.
Again, this one is broad and dependent on what you're using. I think most flexible frameworks that render the views from the back end, that's another form of tools that use templating. And also front-end applications, the one that I use mostly, Vue.js, makes use of templating primarily. So the thing with templating is, if there's a time where you're doing it too much, when you're abstracting too much, and doing that will give you problems at a later stage. You'd find that you can't be flexible with what you're trying to design anymore. So try follow Sihle's rule. If it's starting to happen more frequently, then you need to abstract it out and make it a template. But if you're still setting it out for the first time, just write it out on its own. You don't need to template it then. But something like nav bars, yeah, definitely you might template, but maybe you might not have to. I mean, what if the nav bar only lives in one place? So just writing it out on its own would be sufficient.
Awesome, awesome. I'm not sure if any one of our esteemed panelists wants to also come in, maybe to add a layer to this particular question, because I feel like it's quite broad, as Deuce actually said. I don't know if VT, you want to come in?
Cool. Look, I think it depends. It depends. I don't think there are any hard and fast rules in software. Actually, primarily, I don't believe in rules, but more principles. So I think it depends on the problem that you're solving. Sometimes you might be, doing something at a hackathon, and it's more important to get it done than to get it right. So certain principles or rules might fall out the window, and maybe if you're working on a hackathon over the weekend, templating shouldn't be your focus. But if you building something with a long lifetime, then definitely. So again, it would depend on the lifetime. I think we need to have a clear separation between what a proof of concept is versus the actual build of something. I've seen a lot in my career, proofs of concept become the production code. Proofs of concepts become like a throwaway type of thing. So your little app that you build at a hackathon proves your concept, and when you have to build it properly, start from scratch. So hackathon, I wouldn't template, but real build, I definitely would.
Awesome, 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 awesome. Thank you. Mukundli, I don't know if you want to add a layer there. Okay. Mukundli, are you there?
Yeah, no.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I agree with VT. It depends on the context, and I think it's really important that you don't place yourself in a situation where you are trying to do everything at the most optimal level, especially when you're working at a hackathon. There are a lot of compromises that you need to make. The same when you're still doing a prototype or proof of concept. There are a lot of compromises that you will need to make to actually have it built, like in a reasonable time. But obviously, after you've proved the concept, after you've won the hackathon, after you've received like the positive feedback which you need from the judges, you can actually go on and try to design it the most, like in the most optimal way. But even in that context, you're not going to be able to get everything at the highest quality. And I think it's just one of those things that you got to learn to live with, that you have to do it within a reasonable, obviously, like at the best of your skills, but it's not going to be at the level of Sihle maybe or VT, but it will be at the best of your skills. So it's really important that you understand that, so that you don't kill yourself. You don't feel very bad sometimes for having code all over the place, like in your product, which is in production, which happens a lot. These big companies don't see the shiny logos they have. A lot of them, there's a lot of bad code in production. I'm not promoting that. I'm just saying it is the reality out there. Yeah.
Super, super. Thank you. And Sihle, I saw you had your hand up as well. Let me invite you to just also give your word.
So I'm going to flip this argument, right? What everyone's talking about are components. It's good to build components. Use Bootstrap templates, guys, in a hackathon. No one is going to be building things from scratch. So use Bootstrap templates, and then after that, then you go the other direction. I guess for everyone who's sort of like an engineering purist, listen to VT and the rest of the guys. For everyone who's just getting started, use templates sub Bootstrap. I promise you, you'll enjoy. You'll finish the project. You'll actually finish. So that's like a contrary view.
I really like this question. Is there are many ways to really go around this, and thank you very much for sharing your diverse perspectives around this, and I think they're very empowering to our participants. We're going to take another question, and this question is around test-driven development, right? So we played a bit on it during our game earlier, and I just want you to help us define what is a test-driven development and what basically is the unit testing. Actually, what is this stuff? Who wants to take this? I see Mr. Ricordo, if you can come in there and help us. I see you smiling there.
No, I'm smiling because a lot of people mad at me on this. I've got strong views about test-driven development, what it is, and I think a lot of people define it wrong. test-driven development is primarily about writing the test first. That means your tests define your production code. Obviously there are a lot of definitions depending on who you're talking to, and based on the school of thought that I follow, the aim of test-driven development is to make sure that your production code is actually informed by a test, and those tests are defined as executable documentation, right? So you know that you wanna implement an add function. So you wanna write a piece of code that takes in 2 or more numbers and then adds them together, trying to figure out what the sum is. What most people would do is to assume the input and start coding, and start writing the logic and write the test later. What that does, it usually confirms your biases. So you already know what your code does. So you're likely to write your test to just confirm what you've already done. Test-driven development actually flips this around. There are a few rules around it. One of them is red, green refactor. So first of all, have a failing test, because you cannot prove that your test passes if it never failed before, right? So have a failing test, and that could be writing, again, your add function, and then you can write a test that says, adding 2 plus 2 returns 4. That's a test. And then you call your function, you pass it 2 and 2. And obviously, because you haven't implemented your code, you can actually make it return 0. But if it doesn't return anything and your code complains that your function doesn't return anything, that is a failing test. Then you can make it actually return 4, which is now hard-coded. So your 2 plus 2 test passes, but then you write your next test. Adding 1 plus -2, whatever should return that value, and then the test will fail again, and then now you add a bit more logic to kind of cover your bases. So test-driven development is just like allowing your test to define your design, as opposed to having upfront design, at least at the unit test level.
Awesome. Let me invite Sihle to actually come on board and as well to give us his views on this.
Cool. So test-driven development is writing 3 times the amount of code to solve one problem. That's what it is, right? Because now you have red, blue, green. But it's actually such an important part of code. I think you realize it a lot more when you start working on like huge projects, right? Brownfield projects, not ones where you're starting out and you can like sort of like have your own biases. When you start with understanding, everything starts with business cases, and you have acceptance criteria, you have a definition of done, right? So that sort of like can be translated into a test. And if you have automation testers and things like that in your team, they can start and write that thing and all of that stuff, and you come with your code when it's time, and you sort of like pull their scripts and be able to do some things in there. But test-driven development is writing 3 times the amount of code to solve one problem, and I think it's becoming a necessary part of the software and the tools that we write, especially when we grip to such crazy technology such as blockchain, where whatever you write is immutable. It's gone for good. It's gone. Your code is out there. If it doesn't work, then a lot of people are going to feel the consequences. So I think it becomes such an important facet of developing now. But yeah, you're going to write 3 times the amount of code to just solve one problem.
Super. Thank you very much for that. Let me invite Stu to actually come on board and give us his views.
I'll balance out the 2 views between Lucy and Sihle.
Okay, fantastic.
To say that in most cases, or in context of people participating in a hackathon, you'd find that you're still learning the tools that you're using to build whatever you're trying to build. So for the front end, because you're still exploring how to do things, you can get away with not writing a test. But for the back end, is granular. To get an endpoint, it's usually encapsulated in a single function or a controller of some sort, depending on whatever you're using in your back end. So that's a good place to start teaching yourself how to do TDD, because it's going to be pretty simple to set up. And it pains me to realize now that all the tutorials that I was using to learn how to program really never delve into TDD, because if you started then when you were still learning how to program, how to test also, it wouldn't feel like you're writing the same thing 3 times, or you're writing 3 times as much code, because it's already baked into you. It's like walking. When you know how to walk, you don't think about it, you just do it. So that's TDD.
Awesome, 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 awesome. I love this panel, I tell you, a number of views, adding layers to it, and I think it's absolutely awesome, awesome. We're going to take a quick break to allow our judges to just, sip that coffee, that tea, and, get back to the next section, which will really delve into answering some of the questions that we have coming from our, participants. Thank you very much, judges. Thank you very much to our panelists, actually, for actually adding so much flavor. People are enjoying it. I see there's so much love that we're receiving, from our participants and also from our team members here. They're having a time of their lives. Thank you so much for spending this time with us. And I'll see you shortly after this break.
You know what drives the world? Belief. A belief that the world can be a better place. A place where human life is celebrated. A place where equality has a seat in the boardrooms. Where viruses have left the building and the planet. Where the only room for hunger is in the eyes of champions. Where there is thirst for moonshots. Where sustainability is not just part of a cool #goals. A place where we can breathe. And so can the communities we belong to. These beliefs may sound audacious to many, but you are not alone. We at TCS share your beliefs, and we know how to bring them to life. We are fellow travelers on your journey, equally excited, bringing everything: know-how, innovation, and agility. What do you believe we can do together? We are TCS, building on belief.
Yeah.
Welcome back, everybody. It's awesome to be back. We're still at the TADHackZA 2021, and we're hanging out with amazing thought and practice leaders, guys who've actually been around the block and who have done amazing things in their respective careers, and they've been sharing some insights with us, the good, the bad, and the ugly as well. And I think it's lovely to actually see and learn as well from their experiences. And I can see that our esteemed participants as well are having a great time. There's a lot of love coming through, from also the technical team here who've been saying we love this session, it's going so well. These guys are on fire. Congratulations to our panelists as well, and also to our participants who are actually keeping those questions coming. Thank you very much for the questions that you've been sharing with us. I see there's a question coming from Tobe Gasitole, and the question is Selenium for web. What is basically your thoughts or your ideas around this particular question? I don't know who's the first taker here for this particular question. Stu, let me invite you in to actually give us your thoughts and maybe your answer to this question.
Selenium is very painful because in some aspects it's become a gatekeeper into people getting jobs when you're looking for a role in quality assurance or quality assurance engineering, where you essentially automating tests for web applications. Selenium for web is something you really need to look at if you're interested in test automation. It's something that I've also been trying to invest my time in. There's many applications for it, and there's many other packages or libraries that work with Selenium and the Selenium web driver. Its use case, one of the use cases is for us at work, it's for running automated smoke tests. After a production deployment, after we push something to production, we want to make sure that a person can still log in, press a few buttons, but doing that as a person takes time. And because you're a human doing that, there's bound to be human error. You're bound to miss a couple of buttons, or you're bound to be lazy and say, yeah, I'm sure this thing still works anyway, so I'm just going to skip this part of testing, and then bugs are introduced in production. You start using tools like Selenium. There's Test Cafe, there's Appium for mobile testing, and with those things to automate those flows for you, one, you cut the time it takes to run those automated tests, because you no longer take 5 minutes to log in yourself and type in these things, but it's some machine somewhere that's acting like it's doing these things in the web, and thus you've tested your application end to end.
Awesome, thank you very much. So I saw also that VT, you wanted to come in there as well. Do you want to give us some of your thoughts?
I was just agreeing. Look, I think I agree with Stu that it's something that's used a lot in the industry. It's almost like the go-to tool for most companies. So if the question is this something that I should learn? Definitely. That's not to say that there aren't other tools out there, but like breaking into that space, especially for testers, the age of manual testing is almost like behind us. A lot of companies are waking up now to investing in quality assurance, and the tool that seems to be the leader in the space is Selenium. So if the question is this something I should learn? Definitely.
Awesome. I don't know if there's one last person who wants to come in. Mukondli, let me invite you in.
Yeah, I just want to add on to VT's point as well, that the industry does seem to be going in that direction, and also just offer a practical example of where I was working 2-3 years ago. There was an entire team that was let go because they didn't have the skills to do like automated testing for web. Because obviously in the previous era, we used to test manually. But a lot of companies seem to expect any tester to have both the manual skill or the skills to test manually, but also to be able to use these frameworks to automate the testing. So if you do want to go into that space, it's definitely something that you should look into. It may not be the exact platform framework which was mentioned, but there are a lot of frameworks that you can learn to actually be comfortable with that sort of testing.
Awesome. I see that we have also. Okay, Jos, let me actually also invite you to come in and also just add your voice to this particular question.
Yeah, just want to extend by saying that you can use something like Selenium or something like Puppeteer to scrape websites for data. So let's say there's some cool website out there that doesn't have an API and you desperately need the data that they have. You can use these platforms to web scrape those websites, take out the data that you want, and then continue with the stuff that you're doing. So yeah, you can definitely use them to scrape data from those websites, and have your own data set, something like that.
Super, thank you very much. And this is a rich panel with so much insight and wisdom. And as the panel is sharing wisdom, please do take the notes, and they're actually really fast-tracking your learning cycle. And I see that Sihle as well, you want to put in a word as well here.
Actually, I wanted to speak a lot more to saying that it's not just the QAs and the automation people that use Selenium. I was going to speak a lot more to also what Joss is doing, that exposure to these tools is good, right? They are not only within a fixed context, they are broadly used for test automation and things like that. But actually you can think of it as sort of like an automated person, right? And you tell it what to click at, what div it should look for, what class name or whatever, and it's able to find that, right? So the use cases might seem limited, but just play with the technology. I promise it'll lead to some rewarding results. I've used it to scrape one of the biggest e-commerce platforms here in South Africa because they don't have an API. So yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that and for answering that question. I see that we've got another question coming from Josiah Mohashwa. And the question is, serverless or not to serverless? When does one make the decision between the two? Stu, let me invite you in there. I see you are cracking there where you are.
Few months back, I was a purist, and then I was convinced that, my guy, you're wasting your time trying to build the world from the ground up and reinventing the wheel. When you're trying to get something up and running quick, there is so many platforms that provide those tools already, and you don't have to worry about infrastructure at all. There is Vercel, which was Zyxco. Now it's Vercel. They offer serverless functions. So you just write your code on GitHub, you push, bam, the thing is working. You don't have to worry about ports, server ports, endpoints, and all those funky things. There's Netlify, similar approach. You just write your projects, your JavaScript, you push to the thing, you click here and there, functions, bam, it's working. There's Cloudflare with also workers as serverless functions to simplify all those things. So you don't have to worry about, is my app performant enough? The guys that offer you these tools do that for you. So trying to get like something up and running to say, I want an API endpoint to add 1+1 for me. The quickest person to get to that place is most likely going to use a serverless function. And me trying to pull up a Node.js server or .NET, whatever you want to call it, server thingy, trying to build it all from the ground up, I'm most likely going to take forever. So if you're a tinkerer, serverless, the way to go. And some teams also, depending on what you're building, benefit more from serverless architecture than they would from regular old legacy servers.
Super, very exciting, very fascinating, views, and I hear that you're a purist, and somehow things have changed, because of experience. Let me invite VT to come in and share his views.
99% of the time, serverless. I think serverless is not new. There used to be a service by Facebook called Paz. Back in the olden days, before the Firebases and the AWS Lambdas and Azure Functions, and back then they were not called serverless; they were just called Cloud Functions. It's the easiest way to get started. I like building as close to free as possible, and if you have if you're building something at a hackathon, like I'd say 100% go serverless, because you can build it for free. You don't have to waste time configuring things and worrying about server costs. It's just you and your few mates who are hitting that API. And there's just so many tools out there now that allow you to get started very quickly without having to even learn how to configure servers, how to scale servers, or anything like that. The little caution that I'll give you is that if you're building in production, or you're building anything outside that weekend hackathon app, understand the implications of serverless. Especially when you're working in the cloud, you can easily rack up a huge bill. I've been a victim of this, myself, because some of the serverless, platforms are very generous. I know with Lambda you can hit it like 1 million times before you even start getting charged, but you should hit up someone like Sihle, who's a master at calculating those costs and estimating before. So understand what the implications are, understand how to do the cost calculation, and also set up billing notifications in your cloud environment so that you know when you're starting to hit your limits, but to serverless.
Awesome. Sihle, do you want to come in there as well and put your voice?
Yeah, so having actually built a production serverless application, I can speak from experience in this, right? I think it's definitely something everyone should go for, right? It should be an initial thought, but as you go through the paces, you start ceding control, right? So you give away control, you give away some level of control, you get vendor lock-in. I remember I had started an entire serverless application, dev'd it beautiful, and then I had to move it from my own AWS account to the client's AWS account. Can I tell you, I struggled for 3 days. For 3 days with something that typically has a CLI. And that's sort of like the perils and you can't get it to work without getting to work here, right? But when it does work, oh my God. It's just the best thing you could ever imagine. You don't have to fight with it, but understand that it comes with a fair level of giving up control and vendor lock-in. And as your project grows, like control becomes an even more important thing, right? So you might start off typically as serverless, but I've often seen that teams scale out. So they might move from serverless to microservice architecture, right? So it varies. And then instead of going the full monolith, they go microservice. And instead of just being serverless, they need some customized function that they can't find within a serverless environment, or the execution environment takes too little, or it requires too much bandwidth, and it becomes it's running 24/7. So there are a lot of implications, costs, and why, and all of those. But in an application, in something like a hackathon, definitely try out Amplify, try out Firebase. I would also recommend trying out sort of like a CMS platform for a lot of people. Some people don't even need Firebase. They just need a headless CMS because they are doing crude functionality, right? So it's not even about service at that point. It's right, like how do you get and receive content, right? So know what tool you need for the job, but understand that it comes with a fair amount of giving up control. And yeah, I'd say be cautious of that.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that. And let me invite Jaws. Joss, if you can just also just give us your answer in this regard. I see that there might be a technical challenge there with Joss. I don't know who else. Mugondli, do you want to come in?
Yeah, I just want to head on to what Sita was saying, that like you just need to understand what your task is at hand, and try see if you can use a serverless like architecture for that. But yeah, they're pretty easy to get started with. If you configure them well, you set up your billing alerts, you are sort of aware of how much it would cost for each single user. It's something that you can definitely use in a production environment. I have used it as well on an application that has more than 100,000 users. I have not received a single dollar bill, like even to this day, because it's so well configured. So you can use it and get away with it, but it can also go horribly wrong. Like I've had an experience with AWS where, it was something in the tens of thousands, which I had to send a couple of emails to beg AWS to cancel. So it can go wrong if you don't do it well. But yeah.
Super. Thank you very much for sharing also the good, the bad, and the ugly, as you say. We've got a question coming from Sipumelise Nchonyise. And the question is, what is the best way to communicate between containerized services aside from REST? Who is our taker here? VT, let me invite you.
Cool. So I'm assuming that this is an environment where you're building microservices and you've got one or two services, and I'm assuming the container is something like Docker. So it depends on whether it's asynchronous communication versus synchronous communication. If I can clarify, asynchronous means that sometimes you don't care about getting the result immediately. Synchronous means that you care about getting the result immediately. So let's assume the five of us here are building a digital bank, and we decided that after you make a transaction at the at a shop, so let's say you go to a supermarket and you swipe for your goods, we want to send an emoji. Right, so if you bought coffee, we want to send you a push notification with a coffee emoji, or if you bought beer, we want to send you a push notification with a beer emoji. So making sure that your transaction goes through and we bill you is important. So for that, you might want to use a synchronous communication, meaning that it's happening in parallel. The traditional way to do that for most people is HTTP. So just via REST. So talking from one API to other via REST, that doesn't scale very well. It can get very slow. There are faster protocols for that. My personal favorite right now is something called gRPC, which is at least 4 times faster. And a lot of the languages these days support it very well. I know that if you're working in C# from 3, they have full support. something like Golang supports it out of the ground. And the nice thing about it is that it's not language dependent, right? So you communicate through something called protobufs. Perfect for that. But then if you look at the second part, like, figuring out what emoji or what merchant logo to use to enrich the text message or the push notification you're going to send to the client, that is not as urgent. So you can use asynchronous communication, meaning that you have some sort of background process doing this. And the most common pattern for doing that is via message queues. So there's multiple options that exist there. I think two or maybe three of the most famous ones. I think people working on AWS default to SQS, so simple queuing service. People working outside of that might opt for something like RabbitMQ, and for the fancy Apache fans, they might opt for something like Kafka. So those are the two main ways. So if asynchronous, I would go with a queue. I usually default to RabbitMQ, and then if you're doing synchronous, I would always go for gRPC, provided working with something a bit more modern and supported.
Awesome, thank you very much. And I don't know if there's another taker or somebody who wants to add another layer to this. Should I invite you in?
VT pretty much covered most of what I was gonna say. I'd also add to other than RabbitMQ, there's Redis also, and luckily for us tinkerers and people who like free stuff, Heroku also provides a free instance of Heroku, but they don't provide containers. Actually they do, because I think you push your applications with a Docker file set up with the Heroku YAML. So yeah, that's another way of playing around with comms and how your services will communicate with each other. But essentially that, and also important to note, when working with containers, I'm not sure about Kubernetes, but Docker, containers created within Docker have, you configure this yourself also, have their own private network. So that's also something worth considering, that make sure your comms are secure as much as possible. If it's intercommunication between your containers, they should be communicating within a secure network where no one outside has access to, unless you give them access to those places. And I was going to say PubSub, but PubSub is already there. Another way, a cheap way to hack around PubSub is to create some database table that this guy is going to be adding stuff to it, and then have another guy like a cron job to say, is there any work I can do now? Is there any entry to the works row to check if there's something for this other guy to do? So that's another way of communicating on top of all the things that VT has already listed. Awesome.
Thank you very much. Great answers coming through from our esteemed panelists. This is the TADHackZA 2021. We'll be going to an exciting one also next year. Looking forward to next year already. I see that there are a lot of questions coming through from our participants. They're engaging and they're having a time of their lives. Thank you very much to our panelists for all the insights that they're sharing with us. I see a question coming through, and this question is, what is the best IDE or editor for developers? Some of the participants are also asking if NetBeans is ideal for development. Mukundli, let me invite you to come on board. I see a lot of people. This is actually quite an interesting question, because I see our panelists are cracking.
Sorry, I'm not taking this one. I'll pass it on to the rest of the guys.
Okay, Joss, maybe you want to come in?
Yeah, apologies for the technical issues there. To answer this one, it depends on what language you're using, but I would definitely recommend Visual Studio, depending on what you're using again. But almost everything that you will need, you will find it in the Visual Studio IDE. It supports almost all the languages, front-end frameworks, back-end frameworks. Visual Studio has you there. And then NetBeans, stay away. Rather use IntelliJ. IntelliJ IDEs are also good. But yeah, again, depends on what you need to use. So if you want to have an IDE focused on what you're doing, so let's say you're doing Android development using Java or Kotlin, 100% use either Android Studio or use IntelliJ. I think it's IDEA or IDE. But if you're using something like Node.js, you can get away with using IntelliJ WebStorm or Visual Studio. And then if you're using C#, Visual Studio has you more there. But yeah, Visual Studio Code would cover almost all your languages and frameworks.
Awesome. Stu, I see that you are actually laughing, and I almost wanted to give you like a tissue or so, because I can see tears flowing as you laugh. Please come through and give us your thoughts on this particular question.
I last used NetBeans 7 or 8 years ago, and I'm not looking forward to going back or recommending anyone touch that monster of an animal ever again. But I assume people using NetBeans are coming from a Java background. So your best bet, next best thing to NetBeans, if you think Eclipse is better, IntelliJ is far greatest ever IDE you can ever touch for Java, and it's also going to be super easy for you to jump into other languages that play well with Java and the JVM like Scala and Kotlin, and your gateway drug to Android is already there already. And for other things, Google VS Code for pretty much all the other languages. If you're going to be working on open source projects, JetBrains have this free license or open source license for people working on open source projects, and I think they have a cheaper license, if not free, also for students. So you can look into those things if you think the price is hefty, but it's worth the hurdles of trying to get that license if you can. But if you're still looking for free things and you can't pay for any other JetBrains licenses, your best bet is VS Code, which is Visual Studio Code. And for Java and Kotlin, either Android Studio if you're working on a mobile application, and this other thing, JetBrains IDEA. I think it's IDEA for Java, yeah. But awesome. NetBeans, stay away from NetBeans.
Yeah, no, very fascinating. 7 years ago, my goodness, 7, 8 years ago, that's actually a long time. So let me actually get VT to come on board and actually give us his answer to this question.
I think the best ID is the one that gets the job done for you. It's really that simple. Everyone has their own flavors. When I started out, I think it took me a year to get started on IDEs. I was very afraid of source control and IDEs back in varsity. So I used to work on a little text editor called Cecilia Site. I'm sure Mugondli might remember it. I used it also for my first year of work. Right now, it really depends on what I'm doing. So if I'm a big fan of iOS development. If I'm working on iOS, I still prefer to use Xcode. A lot of people have opinions about it, but I particularly treasure the people who work on the monster of an IDE. It does the job and it does it well, in my opinion. When working on web, I prefer to work on VS Code. I think there's still a debate there on whether VS Code is an IDE. I think it's really playing in a nice middle ground between text editor and IDE. It's very highly configurable. It's free. And it's just all around great to use for power users, and it might cost you a bit of money. The guys at IntelliJ have done an amazing job of releasing a group of IDEs that are specialized to a specific language. So, for example, when I'm writing C#, I prefer to pay for an IDE called Rider, which is one of the suites of tools from IntelliJ. And I like that because it comes with an extension called Resharper. So Resharper is an amazing tool at refactoring your code. It really saves people a lot of time. If you're starting out, you want something free, I wouldn't really advise you to go against anything else. My first IDE was NetBeans, and it did the job. And I only moved forward from it because I started having money to pay for IntelliJ.
Super, super. I like that. The best IDE is the one that does the job, right? That helps you do the job, which is fantastic. Let me invite Mukundli. Perhaps you want to come in?
Yeah, I'm not gonna try and you know, say which one is best and which one isn't. But I just wanna list what I use currently, and maybe that might be helpful to someone. So for iOS code, I use Xcode, which is the default for iOS people. For Java, I use IntelliJ. For React or like any Java-based backend or front-end stuff, I pay for what's this thing? WebStorm, and sometimes I use VS Code here and there, but I prefer WebStorm to VS Code. And then for Android, I use like Android Studio. Yeah, that's my list.
Super, super, super. Sitla, do you want to come in as well?
Yeah, so I think there's a common theme here. We all started on NetBeans, Java, and all of those. Just to give context, right? Instead of giving my preferences, just so you understand, people understand what the frustration is and why everyone seems to have a horrible experience of like NetBeans. NetBeans was created and owned by, it wasn't created by Sun Microsystems, but it was acquired by Sun Microsystems, the same people that created Java in around 1999, right? Before then, it was sort of like a play on the word Zeli, which is a play on the word Delphi itself. So those people actually built Delphi platforms and were building Delphi things. And then that IDE was sort of like adapted towards working with Java. And so Sun Microsystems was running with that. And so that's why a lot of people, so it became the default. So the people that created the programming language and the platform that you use was owned by the same company, and therefore it became the default whenever you're learning Java that you do NetBeans, right? And you use NetBeans. But as time went by, right, NetBeans was really great, guys. I'm not gonna lie to you. NetBeans was great when you were starting out, but as time went by, I think it waned down in support. In 2010, NetBeans, Sun, I think Java, what's this, Oracle bought Sun Microsystems, which ultimately meant Java, and NetBeans. They had a competing IDE, JDeveloper, and from that point on, they donated NetBeans to the Apache Foundation. That's why now it's called Apache NetBeans. And it's a free tool. And so with that comes a lot of perils. If you hear from the panel, it's the moment you start affording, that's when you stop using free tools, right? So it comes with it. Like for some reason, you're like, I've been using these things. These free things are not that good, guys. But if you ask me, I use the same tools that Mokonti does. Same for WebStorm. Like everything I use is actually free. I think I'll get into the WebStorm world, but I like keeping my tools free. I don't want to be kept by money in order to sort of like get the job done. Yeah, sometimes sometimes you don't have a job and it gets rough and you can't pay for a subscription, now you can't code. It's dark times, right? So I don't want that for any upcoming developer. Maybe when later in your career, when you're more established, then you can sort of like look at a lot of the paid, but whatever gets the job done. When you're starting out, NetBeans is not a bad developer experience, but as you go along, you start realizing that could just use just like VS Code for this. So
awesome. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for sharing your insights with us. I mean, it's been really, really fascinating. I'm going to actually invite each one of you to give us your closing remarks. And I would like for you to, first, I mean, this is a very simple question for each one of you to tell us what are you working on, if you can share, and also give us your advice to the SA tech ecosystem and the final words that you can give to the TADHackZA. Mukunde, do you want to come? Do you want to go first?
Yeah, cool. I'll go first. So yeah, I do have a day job, so that's number one priority. At my day job, we're building a backend for one of the big banks for one of their projects. And yeah, I've been really enjoying doing that. I've pushed a couple of commits already, and yeah, that's pretty good for me. And then on the side, I have a number of projects. The one that I'm currently actively working on is called Angola. It's a language platform which is targeted at, like we're trying to teach people African languages. It's going to launch sometime early next year. I also work on Utla, music streaming service, Shitsonga.org, which is also a language platform. And lastly, Round the Fire, which is a language platform, but for ebooks for kids. And regarding what I would say as my last words on this platform, I think it's what's been said already in in the session, which is try find tools that work for you. Don't feel too pressured to perform at the level of CISA when you're starting out. You're not gonna be able to do it. So be a bit easy on yourself. Learn at your own pace. Use tools that work for you. Use technologies that work for you. It doesn't help if you are using the newest technology, but you are not using it the way it's supposed to be used because of your knowledge or because of your lack of knowledge of the platform. So try find something that really works for you. Get comfortable with that. Users normally don't care about any of what we've been talking about here. So go for what's easy for you to use, what's easy for your team to use. And don't be afraid to ask questions. You know, a lot of the guys, even on this platform, will help you, will happily assist you with any issue that you have. And lastly, good luck with the hackathon.
Oh, awesome! Thank you very much, Mukundli, for sharing your insights with us. I would like to invite Jaws, if you can come through and just also give us your remarks.
Yeah. So on the side, I'm currently working on an API that exposes cars that are sold on the second-hand market, and I'm getting this data by scraping the top-selling used car dealership. And yeah, so what I can say is have fun. Try to take power naps if you don't want to sleep. No, it's a hackathon, but no one expects you to be up for 48 hours. Please take power naps, recharge. And then, look at what your sponsors are offering. Talk to the mentors and people from the sponsors. They can really help you with using the tools that the sponsors offer. And then, as Mukundli said, users don't care about what we just spoke about. Mostly, judges probably won't care either. So, yeah, prepare a solution for the judges. Have a good presentation. Have things working. If you have to hard code your authentication, but make sure that you can present your use cases properly, that you can present your solution properly. Solve a real issue, please. And yeah, have fun.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Let me invite VT to come through.
Cool. Thank you. So in my day job, I don't do much coding. I don't have a specific project I'm working on unless the devs in the company put me in on something. Spend a lot of time helping Sika with Git. In my spare time, I'm building a tool. Actually, building this tool with Sika. It's called Glance. The tool that was born out of frustration for me of not actually having. Not being able to answer questions about my finances, simple questions like how much did I spend on food this month? I have multiple bank accounts, and there is one tool currently in the country that provides for that functionality to some extent. I don't like it for multiple reasons that I won't go into. So I'm building my own tool. It's also on my Twitter bio. I tweet about it every now and then. My advice to people entering the tech space, number one is continue attending hackathons. It was a great intro for me. I met a lot of people, learned a whole lot of things that university could never teach me. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Reach out to people, ask. And if there's something that I wish people had told me when I was starting out, is that learn to solve problems as opposed to just technology for the sake of it. There are a lot of things happening out there. Some people will tell you that Vue is the best. Others will tell you React. Others will tell you Angular. It's more important to learn principles as opposed to rules. At the forefront, place adding value, and you can only add value by leveraging technology to solve problems. And lastly, all the best with your presentations. And I hope you knock it out of the park.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Awesome stuff. And let me invite Stu, if you can come in and give us your comment.
Work-wise, working on, I'm not sure how much I can talk about with work, but I'd say if you had a problem with ordering your pizza or your burger from Steers, it might have been my fault. So I'm sorry for that. But on the side, I'm working on passion projects that I started in varsity. Slim Launcher, it's a utility app which acts as a launcher for your Android applications. It's become pretty big for me, and it's all thanks to open source and the communities that I've joined and are part of now. So in closing, I'd top on that to say, build in public. Don't stop with this hackathon. Create these relationships and keep them and use them. Build with your friends and participate in open source projects. Don't let it be a buzzword, because there's so much it can do for your career, and possibly also make you look shiny when you're looking for a job and they're looking at all the things that you're building. And yeah, put yourself out there. And another way is October is coming up, so Hacktoberfest is coming up. It's their 8th anniversary now, for where participants around the world are contributing to open source projects. I wrote a blog article about my app that I was building in varsity. I got someone from Texas to contribute to it, and that was the first person that taught me how to write unit tests for Android and Java. And from there, I've become who I am today due to being part of communities that are out there. So I owe most of my career and all of that I know from the community and wonderful people that I meet on the internet, like all the guys in this panel right now. So yeah, and good luck for your hackathon.
Awesome. Sihle, let me invite you to give us closing remarks.
Awesome. So as VT said, we're working on Glance. That's one of the products that I'm kind of doing on the side. Not kind of, actually. I'm fully in. I'm fully in. It's actually the only project I'm working on the side. Like, I can't believe it. I've grown. But typically, what I do is I help teams win, right? And I help the company win. So it doesn't matter what products I'm building at that time. I'm typically helping the company win. And so as part of my day job, number one, I'm helping maintain the social media influencer platform, right? That does influencer marketing. Two, I help maintain what I built from scratch, a real-time online tutoring platform for kids that are in the formative years. That's made in Angular, right? So that's just my day job. And I think from like what insight and what closing remarks I can give, like, people imagine hackathons are about winning, right? Or even demoing your solution, right? I've been to hackathons where I've demoed but I won something, right? So it's actually about like the opportunities and the things around the hackathon that really matter. My first proper hack with Geek Culture, it was in 2014, 2015. I won a Nokia, whilst the first prize winners won T-shirts. And that came from like sort of like helping teams and like helping teach people. And so those are the values that's the value that I extract from like hackathons, right? So it's teaching and building in public, and ultimately the relationships that get formed from that. I'm one of the few people who can actually say the vice president of Africa of MTN follows me, right? And that's because I sort of like tweeted in public last year on TADHack. I wasn't even part of the hack, but it's something that happened. So those are sort of like the relationships that you can build from that, and ultimately how you can leverage those. Every single work experience that I've had has come from the community, or me working on a weekend and hacking something together. Even the one that I'm at Passat now was because VT saw me building something last year and said, "Yeah, dude, like come through." And then before then, the other building saw me and they wanted, and then before then it was, so it's always been like share, right? That's more important than actually winning. That's more important than the actual solution you're building. I believe, right? Just share your experience, share with other people, grow, right? And that's what you should take away from hackathons. Winning is just, it's a byproduct of good success.
Awesome. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for an incredible session. And I really thoroughly enjoyed this engagement. I enjoyed the game. I enjoyed also hearing from you and also hearing what you're working on, currently. And it's really inspiring for us, to see, your journey so far and so far and so forth. And I just want to take this moment to thank the technical team. Is disturbing me here, colleagues. It's disturbing me. We're having so much fun here. But thank you very much for sharing and spending your evening with us here today. This is basically our Code Blues, which has been really instrumental in ensuring that we can answer some of the key questions that our participants are actually experiencing at the moment. I'm inspired by your work, and we want to say continue doing the awesome work that you're doing to solving amazing challenges that our people are facing, the continent is actually facing. And we want to say thank you very much also for investing your time in this particular platform. Until we see each other again, thank you very much to you. And I want to also say to our esteemed sponsors, thank you very much for making this particular engagement possible. We've got a lot of really amazing sponsors who've actually made this initiative possible. Thank you to MTN South Africa in collaboration with our headline sponsor, Ayoba. Thank you as well to IBM. Thank you to Huawei. Thank you to Globi Tom. Thank you to Contactable. Thank you to CSGI. And thank you once again to TCS, for supporting this initiative. It's really been amazing linking, young people to other communities across the four corners of the world. With that said, I want to invite you, colleagues, as well, and to say also thank you for staying this long and also participating in this amazing code session, code clinic session. I hope you are empowered and you know how to navigate moving forward. Join us tomorrow at 8 a.m. For our final State of the Hackathon address, where we will actually engage deep on what you can expect, basically around issues of the judging criteria and so forth. We'll go into it, and I know that you can also still see what the category is as you are developing your solution. But tomorrow we'll go into detail as we close off activities. With that, I want to say to all of you, have a great evening, and thank you once again to our technical team behind the scenes who've made this possible. Until we see each other again, sharp.